I think we've got 6 people live already, and more are piling in as we speak, as they watch the last tail end of real life tech setup. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Woo, we're already getting some likes on this video. We haven't even started yet.
Keep piling on, dudes.
Keep piling in. Okay, welcome everyone. My friend Brian Hahn is going to blow you away today with his
I'll try.
expertise because he's been helping bar takers left and right to be able to do this in a way that's good for them. And so I thought, why not invite him in and help it make it an easier, softer way for you all who are here in the Pass the Bar community. So his people are on too. They've joined us for this live stream. Hello, make this your last time, crowd.
What's
Welcome.
up?
And Pass the Bar crowd, let's go ahead and just like say hi to Brian. Make sure to answer his questions and engage so you could get the most out of this, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Brian's coming to you with expertise helping bar takers like you for quite some time now. Follow along, stay till the end. He has something for you, right? That's going to help you get started even today. So just watch and engage with us here in the comments. Brian, I'm giving it to you.
All right, Jennifer, thanks for having me on. I am excited to be here. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. I think we tested it with Jennifer, so we should be good. And I haven't done live video since like 2019. It was like back when Zoom was not even a thing. People were still Skyping, so I'm like a Zoom hipster. I used it before it was cool. There's also a video that I did with someone else, like a bar steady motivation podcast. You can check that out on my website. So I don't do this very often. So, Jennifer, thank you for this opportunity to talk live with your people, talk live with my people. And back when Zoom. Oh, I hear some feedback.
Yeah, I just turned that off. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, like Jennifer said, let's have some interaction. Like use your finger muscles, and you'll get more out of it. So to that end, I want to know where you guys are tuning in from. Like which bar exam are you taking? Like if I had to take a guess, there's probably like 2 buckets in here. There's the California people and there's the UBE people. And myself, I just moved to downtown Los Angeles like a month ago. Can kind of see the cityscape in the background. You can see my lamp from Walmart. No one likes my clown lamp for some reason. I don't know. I like it. I don't know what you guys think about it. But let me see what people are saying. PA, is that UBE? I actually haven't memorized all the UBE states. New York, Clara. Okay, we talked yesterday. Like to see you here. California, crying emoji. I can feel that. Florida, just MBE. Zena, yeah, I think Jennifer's going to prepare a replay later on. So, I'll send that out when it becomes available. Okay, so Pennsylvania is not UBE. Got it. Okay. California. I'm still laughing at the crying emoji. Okay, so we got a pretty good mix of people here, I think. Also in the meantime, let me link to the handout that I promised. So I'll drop that in the chat as well as reset it for the people who are watching the recording. So I'll drop it in here. For people who are rewatching this, it's at makethisyourlasttime.com/handout, and you'll see a PDF. And I just dropped it into the chat, so you'll see that as well. So so regardless of which state you're taking this exam in, I want to kind of give you a better sense of direction as you start preparing for the exam. So if you're like most people, and this is especially for people who are taking it for the very first time, like you get this huge box of like encyclopedias, like 10 of these books, and then you're kind of excited, right? Like everything I need to know is in that box. Like how hard can it be? And then you get, you start taking pictures, you like post it on social media. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna be so productive. I'm gonna be so cool. You're not gonna see me for 3 months. And then like a few weeks in, you realize that's gonna be the truth. And you're trying to figure things out. You're trying to keep up with all this material. And bottom line, when people get started with bar prep, it's pretty common to see them kind of get stuck, kind of get lost, and definitely feel overwhelmed. So I wanted to share something that will help you orient yourself better. And I think the very first step that I would recommend in terms of that is to kind of know the exam, like studying the law, studying the issues. That's all important, but so is studying the exam itself. So for example, know what are the logistics of the exam. Like if you're taking, let's say the remote exam, that's going to be a little bit different from if you're, let's say, taking the in-person exam. And what's the grading methodology? Like how do they give scores? And what are the different allocations of the grades for the MBE, the essays, the performance test? And I think that's all very important because you can use that to strategize your approach. And I'll kind of illustrate this with another mini exercise. So my first question to you is, which portion of the bar exam, the MBE, essays, performance test, maybe you had the least favorite subject, like which portion of the bar exam do you struggle with the most? And if you've never taken the bar exam, you can take your best shot at it. Maybe you hated contracts in law school. And let me see. There may be a bit of a lag, but let me wait for people to kind of share their thoughts. I'm gonna sip some tea. This is tea, not the other thing that rhymes with tea. Okay, Clara says essays, definitely the bane of my existence. Okay, so far 100% essays from one sample size. Oh yeah, property. I got a C+ in that class. What kind of tea is this? This is, what is it, berries? I think it's black tea. And I added some citrus jam in here. Essays, MBE, Civ Pro. Yeah, Civ Pro is definitely a killer. Okay, so I can stop here. We got a pretty good variety of different areas. So the follow-up question to that is, which portion of the bar exam do you feel more confident in? Is it the MBE? Maybe you're just naturally better at multiple choice. Or if you're taking it from a different country, maybe you've never seen multiple choice in the first place. Or maybe you're like a nerd, you love torts. Maybe you love property. I don't know. I can never understand that. But yeah, let me see what you think you'll be better at. Okay. So Clara, you said essays are your weak points and MBE is your strong point. And other people are saying essays and MPTs. All right, this is awesome. All right, so just from this, you can see that every single person has different strengths, different weaknesses, which is, that alone is a reason, not to like overly rely on like this plan. I brought this. I'm gonna throw Catherine under the bus because I hate them. So look at something like this. Like this is a single track sort of recommended, I guess, guidelines or something. So for example, look at this. We have torts 1, 2, and 3. We have 3 days of torts. We have California professional responsibility for 1 day, even though it's a pretty important subject, right? And torts isn't even a long subject. Why do we have 3 days for that? We have evidence 1 and 2. We have criminal law 1 day, criminal procedure 1 day. So what if I'm not that great at torts? Or what if I'm actually pretty good at torts? Do I really need 3 days for that? And what if I need more time with professional responsibility? I think if you're taking it in California, I think that should be one you want to focus on more because it's going to appear in every exam. And what if you are working full time? Like, are you like, can you actually keep up with all this? Like, if you're working full time, maybe you have a family. So, guys, let me ask you something. If you have a job, or let's say you have family, you have kids, you have maybe parents to take care of, maybe you have other responsibilities that are going to take up some time. Does it make sense to follow the exact same structure, exact same schedule as, let's say, a 20-something, just fresh grad living with their parents, and all they have to do is study? Does that make sense? Doesn't make sense to me. So just by doing this exercise, we have some self-awareness of what our strengths and weaknesses are. And something like this can be a good start, but just by virtue of having the self-awareness, this schedule for the average student, you're no longer an average student anymore, just by knowing, where you are stronger, where you are weaker, because now you can customize a plan that's just for yourself. And, if you follow something like this, you're eventually going to get overwhelmed. You are going to have to tweak it anyway. You're going to fall behind. You're going to have to try to make it up somewhere. So, that's great, right? You get to kind of have your own plan. You are ahead of the curve. And, I like to say this phrase, you are the dean of your own studies. You get to design your own curriculum. And, by doing that, you get to do something that works for you and not something that was created for the average, sort of the common denominator, right? So, does that make sense? I want to see some like heart emojis in the chat if you can, just so Jennifer knows you're still awake. And then you can get into start talking about creating your own schedule and using that to sort of guide your process. Let me check the chat to see if I missed anything here. Jennifer is the most engaged person in here. Okay, it makes sense to some people. All right, I am glad I'm making sense. I'm not like just rambling here. All right. Okay, so scheduling. So a schedule is sort of like a compass. You get to kind of use that to get a bearing. You get to use that to guide where to go if you're feeling lost. At least you know where your North Star is, right? And you can kind of prepare that upfront and create something that's going to guide you for the next month, maybe the next 2 months, maybe for the entire prep period. And it doesn't even have to be a fixed document. It can actually, it's actually supposed to work for you. It's supposed to serve you and not the other way around. If you are just like blindly following this, then you shouldn't be slaving over this. Whatever tools you have, that is supposed to support you in this process. So that's why we want to try to make our own schedule. And of course, you can use this as inspiration, but ultimately, you will have to know, where you need to do more work in. Maybe you can pull back on some other areas, and I think that's going to be a more effective way than just doing 3 days of course, even though you need 1 or 2. And by kind of adjusting this, you can kind of having this flexible kind of regimen that might even free up more time for your personal things and all that stuff. So I think that's really going to be helpful. That's what I did. That's what some people that I've worked with did. And I think it's been really helpful. So to get you started on that, on page 2 of the handout, which if you're just joining, the link to that is makethisyourlasttime.com/handout. And I will drop that in again. So on page 2 of that, I included 5 questions that you can use to sort of get started. So it's not the full sort of scheduling process, but it's going to help you kind of give you a sense of the direction of what it's supposed to look like for you, and not just for everyone. This is just for you. And I'm not going to go over it right now in too much detail, since it'll take some time and maybe you want to think about it more on your own. But on page 2, you can kind of look at these questions and it'll help you envision what your schedule is going to look like. But I can go through a couple of these. So let me pull that out myself here. So if you're a repeater, for example, maybe you don't need to do such a comprehensive background review again, because you already did that the first time, second time, whatever. So that should shorten the runway that you need to get to the meat of the preparation, which is solving problems. And let's say you are working at the same time, maybe you're part-time, full-time. If that's the case, your schedule may look longer than some other people's schedule. It's not going to look exactly like this. Maybe it's going to look, maybe it's going to take maybe a little bit longer, up to here, because maybe you only have 4 hours instead of 8 hours, like other maybe fresh grads do. So these questions will kind of give you like a picture of what it might look like. So kind of go through that on your own time. And I also included some example schedules for you to dissect. So I have a couple of examples here, one for the California exam, one for the UBE. that person took the New York exam, and they're both 16-week schedules, or 16 or 17, which is just about the time we have until the July bar from today. And yeah, I would advise not to copy exactly what they did, but kind of see like how they crafted it, why they. I think one person left out the entire column of Sundays for herself. So think about how that fits in relative to your needs. Maybe you have more time, maybe you have less time. Maybe you only have 2 to 3 hours a day to do it, in which case maybe your days will kind of stack more. Maybe you will have 3 days at towards. I don't know. But kind of look over it, dissect it on your own time. And I just don't follow exactly, because they tailor-made those for themselves and not for anyone else. So hopefully you can kind of create your own schedule that looks like it, but not, the contents will be different. And just a quick point, one of the schedules looks like a calendar format. The other schedule looks like a list format. So even the formatting can be personalized to your tastes. And let's see, someone said, I just saw a comment here. So Fifi said she started planning based on a sample schedule that was provided in my playbook. Awesome. Yeah, so in my playbook, I include, so the templates are actually a calendar format, but someone did a list format. So she, the New York person, I think she, just completely customized it to her needs, which is awesome. Like I don't want you to just copy me or anyone else. Just do what works for you. Some other questions. Clara asked how to get the playbook. Oh, Fifi linked to it. So Kathleen, what do you consider unnecessary activities? So that depends on where you are. So let's say you're a first timer and this is your very first time studying for the bar exam. So in that case, maybe you should follow something closer to this. I wouldn't say exactly close to this, but for example, if you're a repeater, you may not necessarily need to go through all the lectures again. Maybe pick a couple that you had to struggle with before. But if you are re-watching all the lectures, which I have had some people tell me they want to do, but I said, no, you don't need to do that, right? I mean, that's like 4 hours every day that you could be saving on things like maybe updating a document that has rules that you missed on the MBE, or maybe doing some extra essays or like practice questions, like for the MBE. Or if you're like most people, you are disregarding the performance test. Maybe you'll use that 4 hours to do a couple of performance tests and study answers, right? So the unnecessary part is dependent on you mostly. But I actually try to stay away from things like lectures, because that's very like passive learning. And you really want to do things that you will be doing on the exam, which is solving problems. So I would try to lean toward that than doing passive activities. Let me see, anything else here? So Jennifer asked, did you help them make their schedules? I did so for my personal one-on-one clients. They asked me to kind of do it for them. And for the others who have the playbook, they will get many different examples, many different templates. I have like a template for like 10 weeks all the way down to 1 week. And I have several different actual examples that they can use to take inspiration from. So they can do that. But I can review it for them. But I don't think I'm not going to create it for them unless you're like a client or something. Fifi, okay, the calendar format with the color coding. I think that was one of the examples, right? Okay, so let's see what else. Move on. All right, so let's now boil down what you need for the actual prep. And I've boiled it down to 3 elements. And you can kind of follow along on the 3rd page of the handout. So number 1, that's source materials like outlines, questions like past essay exams and performance tests, MBE questions, and of course the sample answers, the explanations, model answers, sample answers for you to kind of check your work against. So these source materials, these have already been collected and kind of streamlined and formatted for you. So I would try not to reinvent the wheel on this one, unless you want to, of course. But for this one, you kind of want to rely on external sources. Number two, and of course, and I'll kind of get back to these source materials. I kind of go through some of the recommended supplements and things like that. And I do have some links on the third page of the handout as well for you to kind of get started with. Number two, the how-to knowledge. This, bar prep companies, they tend to focus on the what to study. They have all these outlines, and they do a good job of that, honestly. They have really good raw materials. I'm a fan of Barbry's Convisor mini review. So if you have that, maybe you don't need the lectures as much because it pretty much covers. There's a lot of overlap between the lectures and the outlines. So the point being, they tell you what to study, but not really how to study. And that's kind of like in law school, right? In law school, people sort of get kind of divided by how good they are in academic activities. And when I was a 1L, I had just come from engineering school, and I was so there were so many words to read, and I was like, I don't know how to study for this. I got a C+ in my first semester for property, and I considered dropping out. And it was like so different for me. I didn't know how to study, and for the bar, I failed the first time, as some of you know, and it was not until my second attempt at the bar that I really figured out this law thing, this bar thing. I figured it out, or I was on the way to figuring it out, and it started clicking. And don't feel bad if you are not, if it's not making sense. That's kind of what I specialize in now because of what I learned between my first attempt at the bar and the second attempt, and that's kind of what I share on my emails and stuff like that. So that is something you can learn from me if you need help with, maybe Jennifer, maybe some other coaches, or if you are already academically inclined, maybe you don't need to learn from anyone else. You already kind of know what to do. But that's part two. So part one is the source materials, the raw materials. Part two is knowing how to use that to actually learn and retain and kind of understand. And number three, and I think this is the most important part, this is your ability to self-motivate, like drawing out the motivation from yourself to actually start and execute on what you need to do. Like nothing is going to help if you don't have this. And but this is actually the hardest part, right? Getting started is the hardest part. Like there's mental friction whenever we switch between tasks. And so once you're able to kind of get into and start what you need to do, that's going to give you the momentum to keep going. And once you have momentum on your side, you don't really need motivation. You're not going to need inspiration. You're not going to tell me like, oh, I need this today, right? You're not going to say stuff like that. You will be able to draw that from yourself, and you will kind of start developing a habit. And that is going to be important for this marathon of a process. And my goal is to become obsolete. You're not going to need me for motivation anymore. And I hope even after the bar exam, you will be able to kind of have that ability to endure like long hours and like mentally difficult things like at work, and be able to motivate yourself, because you're going to need it as a lawyer. Okay, so let's go back to number one here. So the source materials. As I mentioned, that's sort of traditionally in the realm of like commercial bar prep companies, or like other supplements, other companies like Adaptive Bar and things like that. And while it's good that we have so many options, that's also kind of a detriment, because you're like overwhelmed with all these choices and you don't know what to pick, right? Back when I started, like in 2013, 14, there weren't a ton of resources. I mean, there were still things like Bar Essays, Adaptive Bar. I went on the top law schools forums, which is pretty much barren now. But nowadays there are a lot of resources, because everyone wants a piece of this industry. And I do want to kind of narrow it down for you and recommend a few that might help you. And of course, you don't have to use these. These are just my recommended resources. I have had some sort of interaction with all of these resources, so I've seen them, I've used them. Well, actually, I've only personally used for my own bar prep the strategies and tactics for the MBE, and I would highly recommend that for the excellent the explanations that the author has. The questions cover a broad range of issues that could be tested, and there's a a small guide for each subject. So if you want to brush up on torts a little bit, on how to approach torts questions or how to approach contrast questions, those will be sort of outlined inside the book. So I think this is a good deal. It's about $50 to $90. It's not too expensive. So, and also the 7th edition would be good because it includes actual Civ Pro questions. And if you would like, you can add on either one of UWorld, MBE QBank, or Adaptibar. And which one you decide, that kind of depends on what you need. If you're looking just for the price difference, UWorld is definitely the one to go. But if you have a pretty good grasp of the issues, maybe you're pretty good with the rules, and you just want a bunch of questions to do, then maybe you want to go with Adaptibar because they have like 1,800 questions or something, compared to UWorld, which only has maybe like 1,600 questions. And UWorld uses mostly the newer licensed questions. And I think, if I understand correctly, Adaptibar will also have to cut down on their questions because the older ones, they have to retire that based on some licensing deal they have with the NCBE. Oh, the other popular thing about UWorld is that they have a really intuitive and visual answer explanations after you did the question. So people really like those like charts and the visual aids that they have. I linked a review that I did and a comparison. So if you're kind of having trouble deciding which one to go for, if any of those, you can check that out on the handout. And essays, this is actually where things sort of diverge between all the states because everyone's kind of doing different things with the essays. So I'll start with the California supplement because this one I think is going to be helpful if you are taking the California one. So baressays.com, they have a database of actual graded student answers. So these are people who didn't pass the bar, they got their essays back and their scores back. So the owner kind of buys those essays and kind of has these made available for you guys to study with. So if you are doing a practice essay and you want to know how you did, you want to know how well did you score. So you go into bar essays and you kind of check out the high scoring answers, you check out the low scoring answers, and then you can compare your answers to those answers and see, maybe I did a little bit better than this low scoring one. Maybe it looks closer to this high scoring one. And by doing a bunch of these comparisons, you can kind of tell a pattern with these higher scoring answers. You can tell that they're not necessarily long answers, but they hit all the issues correctly. That's something to keep in mind. And for these contracts essays, I noticed that they arrange these issues chronologically. Things like that. You can kind of see what these actual students did, and what their actual result was, and that's going to be a guide for you. And if you're taking the UBE, if you're taking the multi-state essay exam, I do have a link for that as well. I've linked to different states that publish different their sort of version of the MEEs. I think different states have different questions. So, but it doesn't go back far too much. I think it goes back to maybe like 2010 or so. But I think that's enough to at least get started with. So check out those links. And since different states may publish different questions, even if it goes back to only 2010, you may have multiple sets of those essays in the same time period. So hopefully these links will be helpful to you guys. And let me check back in with the chat to see if I missed anything. Linda's asking about the handout. Let me drop that in again, Linda. Oops. Oh, Clara, what's the name of the book? Are you talking about the MBE book, the strategies and tactics? That's linked in the handout on the 3rd page of the handout. So I linked it there. So Fifi's asking, do you find that the Barbary outline is just as effective as the full outline? I think so. The full outline that they have, it goes into really detailed descriptions of some of these rules. Like they cite like case law. They pretty much brief each case law and stuff like that. So you will probably not need that. I only used it maybe like 2 or 3 times just to dig a little bit deeper into what was going on in the convisor outline. So that might be helpful if you need a little bit extra details on something. But generally, I would say the mini convisor is going to be sufficient for most purposes. And you actually don't want to study like this huge book. Like you're not going to be able to remember all of it. And it's not going to be especially useful on the bar exam as well. So Victoria says, how do you learn the black letter law outside of listening to lectures, reading outlines, which are both very passive activities? Yes. So you want to use those rules to retain them. So that might mean answering questions, writing it out, using it on an essay, trying to memorize it, trying to understand. So there's a difference between memorizing and understanding, right? So memorizing is sort of memorizing the words in the rules, but if you don't understand it, you're not going to know how to use it. So how do you learn the black letter law? You simply use it. So that's what all these past exam questions are for you to try using them on what was previously tested. And another benefit of doing past questions is that you get a sense of which issues and which rules are more important, because you'll see them come up over and over again. So that's so yeah, I would say just bottom line, just use them instead of trying to read outlines or listen to lectures, of course, which are things you have to do in the beginning. So definitely do that to start with, but eventually you're going to have to shift to doing the hard work, the deep work of actually using them on practice questions, actually using them to solve the questions. Okay. Okay, so are there some new comments? Wood is hitting on Jennifer. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's see. Okay, so just to close out, I also included a simple blueprint approach to give you sort of a bird's eye overview of maybe what you should be doing at certain points. So you can look at this on your own time and dig deeper into it, but I think it should give you a framework for your planning of your preparation as well. So that is linked, or not linked, it's included on the 4th page of the handout. And once again, the link to the handout is makethisyourlasttime.com/handout. And I will link it one more time. You can find that there. Okay, well, I mean, that's pretty much what I had for you guys. And hopefully that gives you a good starting point. If it did, please let me know. If it didn't, let me know what you want to see. Maybe next year I'll do another live. And if you want to learn more, I have a bunch of I have a ton of strategies, more resources, more discussions on my website. It's at makethisyourlasttime.com. And the best way to stay up to date is to sign up for my emails. So I will start sending weekly MBE questions and answers should be starting around April. And I will have general emails with timely strategies, reminders, and motivation starting middle of May. I think that's when everyone should have their bar results by then. So I will start there. And just last remarks, as I said before, you are the dean of your own studies. You can design your own curriculum. You know yourself best. You know how much time you have. You know what your strengths and weaknesses are. So if there's anything you take away from this, I would say to have the self-awareness of where you excel at, or where you think you will, and where you need more work in, because that's really going to be your guiding star. And that alone is going to get you ahead of the curve. And at this point, you are no longer an average student, so take pride in that. I hope this conversation empowered you to stray off the path if that's what you need. So thanks guys, and I guess I'll take more questions if we have time. Jennifer, do we have more questions? Do we have time for questions?
Just a few minutes, and while we're waiting for questions to come in, as you're listening, if something rang true for you while Brian spoke, then go ahead and type that in the chat and memorialize it for yourself.
Yeah.
And for people who are going to come behind you and read the comments through the replay while they watch the replay, like what were your aha moments? What were your points of relief? Go ahead and share that with us. I know that it would do a whole world of good. It always does for us to be able to look and see what the impact of our work is on you all. So show some love and type in the chat what came out for you in this talk. And if you have questions, we'll give a few more minutes for questions. Yeah, Brian?
Sure. So let me see here. So Fifi is asking any advice on how to prep for a remote bar exam, what to do and not to do. So the preparation itself is going to be similar. You're going to be, kind of getting your review of the materials and trying to apply that to practice questions and managing your time and kind of having a plan for yourself to kind of get through it without getting overwhelmed at the end or something like that. But the actual taking of the exam is going to be different because you're doing it at home, you're doing it on your computer. So maybe closer to the exam, maybe a few weeks before that, maybe try to shift over to doing everything on your laptop or whichever machine you're going to use to take the exam. So for example, I think for performance tests, they're going to give you like 3 different screens. It might depend on the state, but I think the software will probably give you 3 different screens divided in a certain way. And try to emulate that, because if you are suddenly taking the exam and you're not able to scroll through all the materials in time because you've never done it before, then it might kind of slow you down. So try to emulate the actual setting that you will end up in, whether you're taking the remote exam or, well, I guess you can't really do that for in-person, but at least for the remote exam, try to use the same computer, try to use the same room you're going to take it in, try to use the same layout of what your essays or what your performance test is going to look like, the exam. And let's see, what else? Yeah, I would just say, I think that's a good starting point. Try to do that. And yeah, know which room is going to be the most conducive for your focus. Not so much distractions and also check into your state bar website to see what their rules are. I think for California, you can't have certain things in the background. You can bring a certain number of pages for the performance test. So like do some research on that. That's part of the foundations that I talked about in the very beginning. So kind of knowing your exam before you actually take the exam. Marcia, it was great. Thank you. You're welcome. Clara says, any advice on how to cope with feeling burned out? That is a good question. So right now is especially that question may be relevant because we have like 4 months to go. So generally speaking, I would say not to study more than 4 to 5 months full time, because the longer you go, the more things are going to start blurring, and you will actually end up performing less well, I think. Like you're going to feel like you're plateauing. So just studying consistently is good, but you don't want to do that so much that you feel like everything is blurring together, you're feeling plateaued. So yeah, you gotta kind of know how your energy is going to look like. And managing energy is definitely important. It's not just about managing time, but I think energy is your actual bottleneck, especially if you have a job or other things going on. So yeah, get some good sleep, every day if you can. And let's see, energy. Yeah, I think that's also a pretty personal question. But yeah, just know yourself. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling burned out, you should not push yourself too much. I mean, pushing yourself is also, it's like finding a happy medium, right? You do need to push yourself, but you don't want to burn yourself out in the process, because that's going to just undo everything in July. So Wood posted the question. What did you say?
Yeah, I was looking for it and I didn't see it in the feed.
Oh, okay. I think he was asking about UWorld versus Adaptabar, because there's a lot of misinformation. What kind of misinformation do you think there is? I went over it a little bit. I mentioned the intuitive visual explanations for UWorld. For Adaptabar, their explanations are not as good. People often have complaints about it, and Adaptabar, their platform tends to go down, especially near the end of the prep period. But the good thing about Adaptabar is that they have a pretty good analytics platform, so you can tell where you're lagging behind and where you're doing better. I mean, Your World does that too, but I feel like the interface is a little bit more confusing than Adaptabar. Adaptabar also has a lot of questions. I think around 1,800, maybe a little bit less. But Your World's also catching up. So I mean, they're both great platforms. If you want to save a little bit, I would go with Your World. I have a coupon that'll take like $87 off for this year, I think. And yeah, if you have any feedback on that, I know you have used both Wood. So if you have input on that, feel free to post it in the comments or in Jennifer's group, or you already posted in my group. So maybe we can bump that if you want to.
Okay. All right. Looks like if anything else is coming in, maybe we can address them in the comments.
Okay. Yeah, Fifi asked another question. Yeah, Fifi asked, is 4 months adequate time to prepare if you work full time? I would say so. So if you're working full time, you're not going to have too much time on your own. And that constraint can actually make you more creative with your time and focus on the things that matter. So you're not going to be spending 8 hours, watching lectures or watching Netflix every hour, right? So you're going to be more focused. Or at least some people have reported that having constraints actually made them more efficient. Yeah. So I want to say, yes, it is adequate. But again, if you need more time, please take the time to do that. But either way, I would go for July if you feel confident enough to do that. In the worst case, it's going to be a mock exam that's going to give you valuable data points for you to use the next time around. I mean, I know it's going to cost money to sign up and take the exam, but kind of do your own calculus about whether it's worth it. And can I answer one last question, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Okay. So Alicia says, you mentioned the book that has explanations. That is the strategies and tactics for the MBE. That is linked on the third page of the handout. So you can check that out. Okay, if I don't see any other questions. So maybe Jennifer, you have any input? Maybe what was your top takeaway from this, Jennifer?
Well, what popped out with me is when I read the question about burnout, and that is a real topic. So thank you for asking that question. Was it Carla? And I will I'll plan to do something on that here in the group going forward. Clara Turner. We'll do something on that going forward because that is a real question, and it is, as Brian said, it's a personal thing. So I will kind of outline some steps that you can take to troubleshoot where the source of it is for you as a person, and people who are listening in, if they follow along with those steps, then they'll be able to kind of get to the root of where the burnout is stemming from. And so thank you for bringing that up, Clara. I would love to make sure you get helped on that. And so we'll address that in the future. And maybe we'll get Brian to chime in once we find out what the different causes are of the burnout. Maybe some of it is academic, but as Brian says, it's really energetically based and personal, like there's something inside happening. And so that does like pop out at me like, ooh, I'll help you. We'll do a live on that in a few days or so.
Awesome. Is there anything else you needed from me, Jennifer, or anyone else? I think I actually saw some other questions, but maybe I can just type that into
we're gonna like be in this feed afterwards in the comments and just kind of check back within probably the next 24 to 48 hours. If anything comes up as you're watching the replay, we'll try to kind of take a look at it and answer your questions there. Just make sure you tag Brian or myself, and we'll make sure that you get your questions answered. But for everybody who's watching live, we're going to let you guys get back to your day. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Brian, so much for this.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. This was fun, and maybe we should do it again sometime.
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. All right, bye for now.
All right, bye.
Okay.